What's up, guys? Welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. Hope you're all doing awesome today, and let's get right into today's Reddit posts. How the entitled crazy mother thought she would make a profit off of her child's burns, and failed. A few years ago, I worked in a fast food restaurant. One day I brought dinner to a table at the restaurant's garden where an older woman and her grandson were sitting. I had a short conversation with the woman about their order, and while we talked, the kid, who was around 4 or 5, reached for a cup where hot water was. He poured it all on himself and started crying and screaming. I went inside to get some towels. I didn't know it was the cup with hot water. When I got back, the child's mother was also there, trying to take off her son's clothes and screaming that she demanded compensation. She didn't even know what exactly happened. Her child was screaming in pain, and she could only think of money she could get because of the situation. I was panicking and went back inside to tell the manager about the situation and to tell her to call an ambulance. She did. They arrived and took the child to the hospital. But this is just the beginning. The mother was really hoping to get something from that situation, and she decided to get it at all costs. Seeing her behavior when she screamed about compensation while her child was in such pain, I was really afraid that she would blame me for the whole incident. But I was lucky that the only camera in the garden recorded the whole thing perfectly in full HD, so there was no doubt that I wasn't the culprit. The problem was that the mother and grandmother of the child didn't pay enough attention to what he was doing. The mother wasn't aware that we had cameras, so she decided to straight up lie about what happened. First, she told the restaurant's manager that it was me who poured the water on her son, and that she witnessed it. But she was buying more food at the time it happened, and everyone could confirm that she wasn't in the garden. So she changed the story and said that I assured her that the water is cold. Yeah, for sure I would tell her, who wasn't even at the table, that the cup with the huge note, "Caution, hot," had cold water inside. Again, when confronted with the fact that I couldn't tell her that because she wasn't there, she decided to make up another version and told the manager that the cup had no lid. However, the footage from security cameras showed otherwise. Then she said that she didn't order any hot drinks, but the receipt showed that she was lying again. The mother was furious that she didn't convince the manager that she and her son were the victims of fast food employees, but the story doesn't end here. The next day, she showed up again, raging at the fact that no one from the restaurant called the hospital to ask about her son's health. How delusional she was to think that any doctor would tell a complete stranger details of his patient's health. She informed everyone that because of us, her son had a lot of second-degree burns. The main manager was in the restaurant that day, and he was already informed of the incident, so he knew who he was dealing with. The mother was cussing, screaming that he should fire me and that she will report it to the police and will take us all to court. The manager warned us that maybe I and the other employees from that shift will have to go to the police station to testify. The woman even emailed corporate about the whole thing, but all the evidence was against her, and corporate's lawyers said that none of us should be afraid of any consequences, because it was clear that she will never be able to accuse us of hurting her child. I worked there only during holidays, so I stopped working there around a month after that and returned the next holiday, and another one. It was 2 years after the incident when the manager told me that the mother recently had given up trying to get the compensation, because every attempt was unsuccessful. The footage from the security cameras was enough to prove what happened, and none of the employees from that day were called to the police station nor court. The petty thing about the whole situation with this mother, who was so sure that she will be able to get a lot of money with her lies, the main manager told me that they would willingly pay for the boy's treatment, but they decided not to after she said so many bad things about me and the other employees who had any contact with her before and during the incident. So she was left with nothing but hatred and medical bills. I'm only sorry for the boy who had to suffer so much, and his mother probably didn't even really care, especially that she wasn't able to make any profit off of it. And OP explains a bit more in the comments about what they actually saw. They said I wasn't watching him that closely. I could see him reaching for the food, then I looked again at his grandmother as she was talking to me, and then I heard the child screaming and saw the cup laying empty, and the boy crying in pain with clothes wet from the hot water. It was from the coffee machine. Another commenter said, I wonder if the mother set it up so that her child got hurt, so that she could get compensation. If that's the case, I feel so bad for the child. NOP says, that was my thought as well. The kid didn't grab his own drink, which was right next to his arm, but took the cup with hot water and somehow dropped it on himself. Sold land around my house to a developer years ago. HOA formed and being forced to join it and liens on my property. So long story short, today has been an absolute show. I can't even comprehend where to start. So my parents owned about 30 acres of land in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, on the outskirts of town. My parents built their house in the late 80s, and that's where I've lived my whole life. My parents passed away and I inherited the property, and it's all my land, or was my land. Back in 2005, this developer bought up a bunch of neighboring land and wanted to buy my land. I told him I was willing to sell 10 acres furthest from the house, the adjoining section to his neighborhood. He asked for 20 acres, and I told him that the second 10 acres would be 3 times the price. He agreed, we signed the paperwork, he bought the land, and I was paid for it. End of story. Or so I thought. The land sat empty for over a decade since it took a while for him to sell the plots of land he made to homebuyers, and his company built houses. From about 2005 to 2012, the land sat empty, and I didn't mind. I still mowed the grass and whatnot to keep it tidy, but never tried to take the land over or anything. By fall of last year, he had finished the entire area, and there's about 200 homes in that neighborhood. Because of the neighborhood, my 10 acres is now worth about 10 to 20 times what it was originally worth, and the HOA knows that. Since the September of 2017, I've had a bunch of angry letters and citations left on my property and in my mailbox. Some of them include having a barn larger than 7 by 7 feet. I have a 20 by 40 barn. Having abandoned vehicles on my property. It's a project car shell that I'm working on. I have the actual chassis in the barn, but it needs quite a bit of work. I bought an old rusty body and it sits outside and will continue to do so until I can deal with it. Having a non-conforming mailbox. Still no idea what the hell this is. Having the improper roof tiles. Again, no idea. I ignored them and told the HOA members that I'm not part of their neighborhood, and therefore have no reason to follow their BS rules. The HOA said since my property values have gone up, I owe back dues from the day I sold my land, before there was even a single house built, and have to correct everything on the list. The back dues are currently $10,200, but they state that if I don't pay by December 31st, 2017, I will be charged interest that has accrued. Again, no idea where they are getting the interest from, but I do believe their HOA fees are around $750 per year. It'll cost me about 15 to 20 grand to, quote, fix my house. I think it's absolute bullcrap that they can even try to make me do so. 1. I went through all the documents I signed and not a single document from the developer makes any mention of an HOA or my association with it. 2. I have no idea why the HOA is coming after me. I live almost half a mile away from the nearest house that belongs to the neighborhood. The entire neighborhood has its own little custom street signs and lamps. I don't have any of that, so how can they say I'm part of the HOA? They said to either pay up or they will put a lien on my property and take it over. From what I understand, if I pay the $10,000, doesn't that mean I'm admitting guilt and being forced into the HOA? Update. So I just had an hour-long discussion with the lawyer and he went through all the documents. He asked if I was sure that was every document, and I told him it was. And when I sold all the documents, I put them all in the same folder along with my taxes. He says that there is no chance I'm in the HOA, since I didn't sign anything. He let me know that he'd be glad to send a cease and desist letter to the HOA. I brought up adverse possession, and he suggested I don't pursue it, since I want them to leave me alone rather than instigate anything bigger. So for now, he said to not pay anyone or sign anything. He'll mail out the cease and desist letter today, and he says if the HOA tries contacting me, I should just tell them to contact him instead. Continued. So I met with the real estate attorney that was referred to me by a Redditor on here, and did the title search, and I'm in the process of trying to find the old developer's master plans. So far, here's what's been dug up. I sold my land to developer A. He owned the land for about 2 years and then filed bankruptcy and lost the land to the bank. That's when the maintenance of the land went to crap, and I was mowing it and taking care of it, because the bank didn't care. Bank sold it to developer B, and he said he was no longer part of the neighborhood, and in fact, the HOA is in charge of the entire area. His company just owned the lots and they sold and built on them for the families, and they have zero say now. I asked him about the master plans and if he thought he owned my remaining 10 acres, and he said absolutely not. The entire neighborhood sits on old land plus the 20 acres that were purchased from me. So he was helpful and it was clear he had no wrongdoing. I spoke to the lawyer to see if we could file an adverse possession on the land I maintained, but he said it would be a waste of time and money. But I was just going to do it to spite the HOA. The title search and everything came up clean. It showed my parents as the previous owners, and then me, so no way could they have owned my land. The records go way back, and there is a clear chain of ownership as my lawyer put it, and it's incontestable. We sent the HOA a cease and desist letter as well, to stop contacting me unless they have actual signed documents that show I was part of the HOA. They never got back to me. I was out of town and came back last night to my mailbox missing. It was cut clear off the post with a chainsaw, wooden post with a metal mailbox on top. I told my lawyer this, and he says that it is a big deal and that USPS would send the person to jail. I repurchased an identical mailbox and set up cameras all over the property. If they try it again, I'll have them on tape. But the biggest thing we uncovered was that we found out what they are planning. Turns out that the HOA wants to put in another community playground and a pool and clubhouse, and they need land. They can't expand in any other direction since they're almost on the end of a highway on one side, and the other sides are zoned for agriculture. They decided they'd try to take over my land. They have yet to also file a lien on my property, so I'm guessing they were trying to force me into the HOA to make them sell my land below market value. Either way, they showed their hand and now I'm on alert. We filed a complaint with the police regarding the stolen mailbox, and we have a paper trail for that now. It's just a waiting game to see what they do next, I guess. Should I send them a letter saying I know their plan and there is no way they can get my land? They have their monthly meeting every second Tuesday of the month, so it's in a few days and I'm sure I'll be the topic of discussion. Should I go to it? So this is part 3 and most likely the final update for now. So I was away for the holidays and I came back on Monday to find my project car was towed out of my driveway. My pond was emptied out and filled with gravel and sand, and a fenced off 2 acres, 2 chains by 1 furlong, of my property closest to the HOA. I immediately called the police and filed a report regarding the stolen property. The car wasn't registered and was just an empty shell, so I have no idea where it is nor will it be easy to track. It's not worth a lot, maybe $2,500, but it's the principal of that jackass president of the HOA. I had my lawyer draft up the cease and desist and sent it nearly 2 weeks ago, and they haven't contacted me in any way except this. I hired a local salvage company to come tear up the fence this weekend, and they are doing it free of charge since I'm letting them keep the fence to sell as scrap metal or whatever they do with it. My lawyer suggested I send up a letter demanding payment to fix my pond, as it was filled with gravel and sand. A local landscape company quoted me nearly $8,000 to get the pond back to the way it was, so that is what he suggested I ask, and another $2,000 for loss of use of the pond. The HOA has lawyered up, so I think it's best I no longer post anything else on here until it's settled. I didn't want to leave you all without some closure since you all have been an amazing help. I've put a picture of the layout since a few people asked. It's bad, but should convey the land. And that's where all the updates end. But also keep in mind that they originally posted this in the legal advice subreddit, so it's not so much that they were trying to tell a story for people, but more so that they were asking for legal advice. But that's a pretty screwed up way for a homeowners association to operate. They obviously have no clue what they're doing. How they could assume someone's property is part of the HOA without any paperwork to back it up is beyond me. But all that aside, even if OP was in the HOA and breaking all these rules, that still wouldn't give them the right to do what they did. And it seems like they would always wait for OP to be gone before they did this stuff too. And that's going to be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you want to see more. Take care and I'll see you next time.